law at Columbia Law School. Caroline, just want to get your reaction to Holmes's verdict and insight on what piece of evidence you think kind of turned the case against the Theranos founder, and with that, I guess clearly the case the case of defrauding investors specifically.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alicia. At first blush, it does seem a bit like a compromise verdict. As you just noted there, the jurors did not find Elizabeth Holmes guilty on several of the counts with respect to defrauding patients, and then they hung on a few others. But really, the top line out of this story is that, they found her guilty on some of the most serious charges, not the least of which is a conspiracy to defraud investors. And then there are substantive charges of wire fraud under that charge as well. And so I think the takeaway here is that the government carried its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Elizabeth Holmes did indeed intend to deceive her investors by making material false representations with respect to Theranos and the ability of the company, of its technology, the financial state of the company, the extent to which it had with defense is
as we both noted, the jury obviously found Holmes not guilty on 4 charges, really related to the patients, kind of linking Theranos and her claims to patient, care or patient concern. Why do you figure or believe kind of the jury reached this verdict? Was that just a harder leap for the jury to make, and even the law and prosecutors to make? And in our cases against kind of individuals' health, kind of a bit harder to prove.
Yeah, so I think it has to do with the fact that the government's evidence really went to Elizabeth Holmes's with respect to the representations they made to investors. I think in Mouth herself, the government proved in what I think was some of it's about in Afghanistan with the department were happening, how the technology was actually sending out blood samples to third-party commercial analyzers as opposed to using it on the Theranos proprietary devices. I think that was a huge piece of evidence for the government with respect to its case against Elizabeth Holmes in terms of defrauding investors.
Many businesses and founders, especially in Silicon Valley, have kind of stretched the truth or defense, pointing to this even during the trial, that fake it till you make it culture in Silicon Valley. We know there have been past cases and instances where there have been flat out fraudulent claims to investors and customers. Does this case kind of provide another deterrent for other companies or other leaderships? And I would stretch that and say, does a potential kind of aggressive sentencing send a chilling effect to Silicon Valley and other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, this is absolutely a flag in the sand that the government has planted. Traditionally, Silicon entrepreneurs can get a bit ideological. Those are lies, and it's criminal to make material misrepresentations with respect to what's happening at your company for the purpose of obtaining money from investors. And certainly, this has much farther reached really limitations in terms of setting.
Something that my co-host and I, Asia Celestino, talked about earlier was the potential chilling effect, and in a way that we might not want to see it, in terms of the reputational impact this has just for female entrepreneurs in the tech in the tech side and industry, kind of more broadly here. What are your thoughts on that potential kind of reputational domino effect to unintended other women in this space?
Yeah, I mean, there has been a lot written on sort of the reverberations that the Elizabeth Holmes story has had on female founders throughout Silicon Valley, and certainly, they are in the spotlight. I think in a lot of ways, Elizabeth Holmes' spectacular rise in fame was really her downfall. She had a target on her back, and people were watching and waiting in the wings. And it's a sad story. I think this is going to have
Really appreciate your insight. Caroline Polisi, criminal defense attorney and lecturer in law at Columbia Law School.